Hi friends, welcome to our lecture 7 of Quality Management System, which is ISO 9001-2015. This is Amar Dinesh Singh. Let's quickly recap what we discussed in lecture 6. We discussed about clause number 6, which was planning. Its three subclauses 6.1, 6.2 and 6.3. 6.1 states an action to address the risk and opportunities. 6.2 quality objectives and planning to achieve them. 6.3 Planning of changes. What are we going to discuss in today's lecture, which is lecture number 7? We are going to discuss about clause number 7 in detail, which stands for the support. Its 5 subclauses, which is 7.1 resources, 7.2 competence, 7.3 awareness, 7.4 communication, 7.5 documented information. When it's come to clause number 7, which is support, what do we exactly mean by the support? This support specifically talks about the people, infrastructure, and environment for the operation of processes, monitoring and measuring the resources, organizational knowledge, competence, awareness, communication, and documented information as a support resources that shall be determined and their effectiveness need to be evaluated to ensure that the organization deliver a high quality product and the services and meet the customer requirements at the end. So whenever an organization is going to establish the QMS, which is ISO 9001-2015, it requires a kind of support from its management. So this support could be the people, it could be the infrastructure, it could be in the environment of operational process and etc. So many. Why is it really important? In providing the necessary monitoring and physical assets, resources and systems such as personnel, plant, logistic, working condition, etc. In providing and maintaining the monitoring and the measuring resources such as calibrated equipments, determining and maintaining the organizational knowledge, ensuring personal competency and providing additional training to achieve those kind of competency, communicating the quality policy, its relevant quality objectives and each employee's contribution to the QMS. Documenting the information necessary for the operation of QMS processes and conformance to ISO 9001-2015. I hope now it's clear that why this support is really important for an ISO 9001-2015 when it's come to its effective implementation of the QMS across the organization. Now, what is this subclause 7.1, which is resources? As you can see towards my right hand side, there is a one block. In the block, there is one triangle, and from top to bottom, there is a flow of the requirement. Like first of all, it comes the people, infrastructure, environment, monitoring and measuring, and organizational knowledges. So, as we have discussed in clause 5, which is leadership, this leadership is responsible to ensure that the adequate resources are provided for effective implementation of the QMS. Now let's understand what are these resources and the requirement of ISO 9001 for each of these resources. Now we are going to discuss the sub-clauses in 7.1, which is 7.1.1 general, 7.1.2 people, 7.1.3 infrastructure, 7.1.4 environment for the operation of processes, 7.1.5 which is the monitoring and measuring the resources, 7.1.6 which is the organizational knowledge. Now, in order to establish a particular QMS, we require people in first place, then comes the infrastructure, then subsequently the third remaining category. The first is the people. Adequate people should be provided to ensure effective execution of the processes and the quality management system. Organization need to evaluate their needs at regular interval as their need may vary over a period of time. What does it mean? So, when it's come to the implementation of the QMS implementation is not only the responsibility of a single department. For example, if I am from production, it's not only my responsibility to ensure that the QMS has been implemented. It's equal and contribution efforts coming from the different departments in order to implement a QMS or the set quality policy or the set quality objectives. Hence, whether it's a production department, whether it's a QC department, whether it's a R&D, whether it's a purchase, logistics, store, etc. All of them plays a tremendously important role in order to drive the implementation of a QMS in a particular organization. Now, yes, definitely. Let's say, for example, there is a sales requirement of an expert in a particular organization of Y. This requirement will definitely get vary on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis, or on a monthly basis. So, in order to meet those targets, definitely a particular department or that organization need to do a frequent check at a particular interval of time whether the given amount of manpower is sufficient to meet those needs or not. If it is not sufficient, then definitely it's the responsibility of the leadership which comes under the clause 5 to provide those kind of resources on a given request by the departmental HOD. Second comes the infrastructure. Now we have people in place. So where are these people going to work? Definitely they require some kind of facility or the infrastructure. Infrastructure comprises of the instruments, it comprises of the communication, it comprises of transportation and various etc. So the organization determine, provide and maintain the infrastructure required for the smooth operation of the organization. This infrastructure includes the hardware, software, equipment, utilities, instruments, communication and transport facility, etc. Third is environment for the operation of processes. Now, let's say there is an organization by they are dealing into a manufacturing of automobile parts, parts for the particular car. So this part is definitely going to get manufactured in a particular room. This room can be divided into 3-4 parts like the assembly room, okay, fabrication room, accessories room and the packing room. So we require a particular environment in order to operate this kind of activity. For example, it requires that the social, physiological and physical aspect of the work environment are maintained to provide a conducive and stress-free environment for people to operate efficiently. The physical aspect include the workplace location, the humidity, the heat, the light, the pollution, the cleanliness and facility like washrooms, breakout area, cafeteria, etc. A calm social environment in the offices with policies like non-discrimination, conflict management, get-togetherness. This celebration helps in providing a stress-free environment and increases the productivity. Now, here comes the responsibility of the HR department. This HR needs to bring a good policy in order to create this kind of environment across the employee, across the 360 of the organization. Fourth comes the monitoring and measuring resources. Now, whenever we are going to do a certain kind of activity or a process in a given space, then during the process there is a requirement such as we call the monitoring and measuring. For example, the monitoring and measuring the temperature and all, the physical attributes. So this organization identify, measuring and monitoring the resources and apply control to ensure that these resources are fit for the use. Maintenance and calibration methods should be put in place for monitoring and measuring the activities carried out in the organization. Organizational knowledge. The organization demonstrates that they capture knowledge and retain it through methods like lesson learning at the end of the milestone project, best practice conference, meeting or through other forms created with the organization. 7.2, which is competence. Now, when we have recruited these people, so definitely we need to give a check in terms of the competency level at a particular interval of time, so that we can ensure that the particular people or the particular staff is having a desirable amount of that knowledge to deliver a particular task. So the organization shall determine the necessary competence of a person doing work under its control that affects the performance and effectiveness of the QMS. Ensure that this person are competent on basis of appropriate education, training or experience. Where applicable, take action to acquire the necessary competence and evaluate the effectiveness of actions taken. retain appropriate documented information as evidence of competence. For example, there is an uh, employee number one, who is trained on a particular process. So his competency for that process will be evaluated on a 6 monthly basis or a monthly basis defined by the HOD of the department. Whenever the HOD, whenever he is going to do the competence mapping, there should be some kind of documented information. Like for example, he may ask him to do the independent activity in his absence, or he may give the questionnaire such as kind of multiple objective question to track to know whether he is competent or not. And that can be evaluated in terms of the grading or in terms of the score. Now comes 7.3, which is awareness. The organization shall ensure that the person doing work under organization control are aware of the quality policy, its objectives, their contribution to the effectiveness of the QMS, including the benefits of the improved performance, the implication of not conforming within the quality system requirements. 7.4 talks about communication. According to the requirements, there are the following 5 items that needs to be included in a communication plan. So guys, you can see this is a flow chart, the particular snapshot. So what to include in an ISO 9001 communication plan? First comes what to communicate. Second, when to communicate, with whom to communicate, how to communicate, and who does the communication. Based on my experience, I have seen that most of the organizations they fail when it's come to the proper communication. The communication has not been moved from one person to the other person or from one department to the other department. Due to a lack of communication, at the end the organization failed to deliver its milestone or to achieve its goal or achieve its objectives or the mission and vision of that particular organization. So the communication should based on this 5 pillar. For example, I am going to give few example. Let's say what to communicate when it's come in terms of the product, services, quality policy, delivery, audits, improvement. When to communicate all these kind of requirement in a contract initiation, renewal or the amendment, after changes to the policy or the process. To whom should we communicate this kind of requirements? It should be customer, because customers link the quality policy, the delivery, the audits, the improvements and the risk. How to communicate? Through a contract agreement, through a service review, or via internet. Who is going to do this kind of communication? It will be done by the marketing manager or the customer executive. Second comes about the contract agreement, quality policy, contract amendments. So when are they going to be communicated? They are going to be communicated during the contract initiation or the renewal, or after changes to a policy of the process. Whom they shall be communicated? Shall be communicated to the supplier. How? Contract service review. Who is going to do? Purchase manager, purchasing executive. Now, when it's come to the quality policy, applicable legislation and regulatory requirements, the customer requirements, the customer satisfaction, all applicable policy and process. When are we going to communicate all these kind of things? At the induction and the refresher training, after changes to a policy of the process. To whom are we going to communicate? To definitely to our staff. How? Via awareness training, newsletter, company team meetings, intranet, memo, notice board, etc. Who is going to communicate? The HR manager and the team leader of that particular section. Sub clause 7.5 speaks about the documented information. This 7.5 is sub-categorized into 7.5.1, 7.5.2 and 7.5.3, which comes as a general requirements, creating and updating, control of documented information. Now, these organizations identify and maintain the document required for the effective working of the QMS. Methods should be put in place to ensure the confidentiality, the integrity is maintained, and improper use for the documented information is prevented. Organization shall ensure that all the document information is identified, stored, maintained, and controlled throughout the following methods. This method have been speaking in the 3 points. The document shall be identified with a title, number, date or other such method. Method shall be put in place to review the document for the suitability and its adequacy. Once it is done, the organization shall specify where the document information is going to be stored. This can be done by maintaining a document at a common location or a server, cloud, etc. The organization shall ensure easy accessibility of the document and availability to those who need the document. This can be done by maintaining a document at a common location, server, and making them accessible to a limited person who need this document. Fourth, document shall be protected from unauthorized accesses. Access rights and password policies should be put in place to maintain the confidentiality of the document. Adequate training needs to be provided to employees so that they understand the importance of the confidentiality. When it's come to a distribution, so the distribution document shall be controlled to ensure that only the current version are given to a particular department for their use. While giving the current version, the QA person need to ensure that the obsolete version have been retrieved from that particular department or have been keeping it assigned in a separate folder to avoid unintentional use of an older version. Periodic backups of the electronic documents and restoration tests shall be performed to ensure that the documents are preserved. 7. Changes to the document shall be controlled to maintain the integrity of the document. Revision shall be approved considering the purpose of changes, their consequences, integrity, resource required, and changes in the responsibility. Okay. 8. The retention and the disposition document shall be defined. Organization need to identify the retention time for a record as per your business, contractual, or the legal requirements and dispose of the document whenever the retention period is over. Typical disposition include the archive, recycle, the shred, where other ways to do it. Thank you. Please follow me on below links to get more detail.